When I was in college, I took a part-time job stocking shelves at Kohl's. We would arrive at 2 a.m. and work until 7 a.m. Each morning, we have 5 people arrive like clockwork. We would walk in through the same door and take the far left aisle to get to the back of the store where the employee lounge was located. On this morning, I took the middle aisle because I wanted to bypass the lounge and go to the inventory room to load up my cart. Department stores are creepy when they are not open, especially with 90% of the lights turned off. The floor sometimes has mannequins half-dressed and in the aisles because they are constantly shifting products around after closing up the day before. You also have birds in the building that get startled and fly around scaring the heck out of you. On this morning, I walked down the center aisle and noticed this man walking from the back of the store to the front. He looked to be an older gentleman wearing business clothes. I thought it was odd, but sometimes the regional manager would show up early at this time, but that guy was tall. As we approached one another, I couldn't get a good view of his face. He was wearing thick eyeglasses that cast a shadow over his mouth and chin, blocking any chance of making eye contact. It was awkward, so when we got within 10 feet of each other, I greeted him good morning. I gave a quick look, but couldn't really see his face, so I looked back down. He gave a cheerful good morning in response. I continued to the back as he continued to the front. I went into the inventory room and began unboxing items and placing on them in the cart. The manager of the morning team came back and started giving me the instructions for the Christmas items. She was very charismatic and always happy. After she finished giving me my action items, I asked who was the corporate guy I saw this morning. She gave me this weird look and said nobody was expected this morning. She asked for a description and I shared it with her. She felt it could be the new regional marketing guy, but that couldn't be because he doesn't have keys and they never come at 2 a.m. She darted off to the neighboring admin office to find out if anyone was expected, and I went back to work. 20 minutes later, she came back saying that nobody was expected, and the security system showed no entries since closing the night before. She joked, asking if I was pulling one on her or if had been drinking. I told her to check the cameras because I definitely saw someone. She asked if I would go with her to the security room to check the camera feed. I agreed, and she grabbed my arm and walked me to the room. She joked, saying we should go see if we can find your new imaginary friend on the cameras. I was really amazed at the technology Kohl's had. They were not using the cameras for security purposes, but for business as well. She explained they had software that would capture shopping behavior that helped Kohl's identify where to put items on the floor. I was pretty impressed. She pulled up the interface for the cameras and set the dial to the hour we arrived, and it started to play the first camera angle. I saw myself, but there was nothing else. I couldn't remember exactly where we crossed paths, but I thought it was in the area this camera was showing. She asked if I was drunk again. My mind was blown. I really started to question my sanity and said there was no way he's not on film. She pulled up the next camera angle, and this time we saw a shadow figure moving around in the back next to the walls. It was quickly scrambling around, weaving through the clothes racks with the clothes moving around on their hangers. There was no visible human being. It just looked like something dark and short running through the women's section. I went from questioning my sanity to being completely freaked out. We both got the chills, and she stood up to turn on the lights in the room we were in. We were both in disbelief. After viewing it again, she suggested viewing all the angles to make sure this is real. She clicked the next camera pointed in that direction. It started to play, and we saw a dark shape that resembled a person this time. However, it was a person moving around on all fours really fast and low to the ground. It's like something you see in a horror movie. At this point, the manager picked up the phone to call 911. I told her there was no way the guy I saw was that athletic. He was well into his 50s and about 200 pounds. While she was on the phone with the operator, she clicked on the next camera angle, which gave us the overhead 360 view. I get goosebumps thinking about this again. At this angle, you could finally see the man in clothes, but his face was so freaky that our jaws dropped. She hung up the phone. I yelled, "Why did she hang it up?" I saw her eyes start to water, and she hit the speakerphone option and dialed 911 again. To this day, I still cannot explain that face. It was like he had no mouth or lips, with the chin slowly taking shape as he moved. However, with those glasses on and little to no lights, it made it difficult to confirm what we were actually seeing. We played the next camera at the exact time we arrived, showing toward the front going out of the building. She set it at 10 times forward, and this one showed nobody leaving. Now we have camera angles confirming someone or something from the back moving to the front of the building. But as it moved and passed the dressing rooms, there was a gap in the midsection between cameras. It couldn't be found. I said it was still here. She asked me to get on the overhead speaker and ask everyone to come to the lounge. I did so and heard her telling the police that we had an intruder or a possible squatter. She added that we didn't feel safe and asked that they hurry. She got on the intercom and repeated my message, but stated it was for a quick meeting. She switched the screen showing the live camera feed to focus on the front entrance of the store, seeing if it would ever show up and leave. I started to hear everyone coming to the lounge, and we received notification from the 911 operator that 2 officers had arrived and asked we open the door. Thank goodness the patrolmen were sitting in the parking lot next door. She told the operator that they come to the back of the building because she felt the intruder was still in the middle of the store. We continued to look through different camera angles until we heard the police banging on the door next to us. She jumped up and disarmed it, but couldn't get it to unlock. She realized she was using the wrong key due to panic, but finally got it open. 2 officers walk in, and we started to vomit information. They asked for 1 person to speak at a time and to slow down. After explaining that we believe the person is still in the building, they started to be alert. 1 cop said he would stay with us, and the other volunteered to walk the floor. The cop who stayed asked to see the video. I sat there watching the officer's face instead of the video. I couldn't watch it again. He was disturbed by what he was seeing. He kept saying these are not normal moving patterns and asked if we thought it was a dog. He kept rewinding, and I suggested he look at the other angles. He got 10 seconds into the other video and grabbed his radio on his shoulder and requested assistance. He specifically requested 5 of the closest patrolmen in the area. He looked at the video system hardware and asked what year it was purchased. She explained it was brand new, and he asked if the brightness could be increased. She brightened it, but it didn't help, and then came the distorted face scene. He said, "Holy hells, this guy is not human." He started to question the quality of the video. Then I told him I saw the guy this morning, but he looked normal considering it was dark. I explained that we both said good morning and he was wearing typical business clothes. I shared that his face looked odd because his thick glasses cast a shadow on his face. I noticed he felt relief after I explained, and we continued to go through the footage, and he kept saying this is really freaky. This guy went from a demon running on all 4s to a casual guy from a distance. He claimed he had never seen anything this bizarre and definitely felt he was still in the building. Within 5 minutes, the other patrolmen started to show up, and they did a search of the store area. We all stayed in the back watching the cops watch the video. After looking through all the videos and searching the floor, nobody was found, and no video showed him leaving. They got out their paperwork and started to interview us. During this time, we viewed all camera angles in fast mode to see if we could see him before we all arrived. We found one instance where a coat fell from the hanger onto the ground, but nothing near it. There was no video of anyone except the crew that closed. The entry system log was shared, showing no intrusion or access request was made. In the end, they had no idea who it was or what exactly happened. A report was filed and the video was taken. The cops went to the neighboring stores and went through their video feeds. They got nothing. We opened at the usual time and no shelves were stocked beforehand. To this day, we don't know who or what that was. Thank goodness, no other similar encounter happened again. I work the night shift in the locked unit of our nursing home. This is where the most sick people in the facility are, like patients with dementia, behavioral problems, and severe mental illness. So, I'm pretty much locked alone in a long, dark hallway to check in on everyone throughout the night. It's a very large, 3-story building, and this wing is on an isolated half of the top floor. Nobody likes working back there, especially at night, because the patients are harder to take care of, and let's be real, it does get spooky back there. Being locked, it has this claustrophobic feel that creeps you out. I have a number of stories from my time here. Once, I heard a raspy male voice shout, "Hey, come over here," from the dead end of a hallway. There were no men in that hall, and all patients were asleep at the time. There's no TV or radio on, and no logical explanation. I found out when I told someone that there was a patient who died right before I started that would come to the door and call for help just like that. They even described the voice the patient had, and it matched what I heard. Next, we had a patient die. She was a middle-aged woman, known to be very rude and always telling people what to do. She bossed around the other patients and would always shush others even if they weren't talking loudly. My husband, who works in a separate unit in the building, and I were talking in the hall outside of her old room. Suddenly, our conversation was interrupted by a loud shush. That sounded exactly like when she would hush up other residents. Also, it sounded like it was right next to us. Again, all the patients were asleep, and there were only the 2 of us in the hall. A few weeks after that, we had a patient moved into a shared room. The woman she moved in with wasn't always friendly to her. She sometimes swung on her if she took food from the other's plate. Not long after moving into the shared room, she passed away in there. Suddenly, her less-than-friendly roommate was terrified to sleep in that room. She lived there alone before, hadn't seen the death, and her dementia was probably too far gone to even remember she had a roommate. However, she was still terrified of that room at night. She refused to go to bed, which used to be hard to get her out of. And if you did get her to lie down, she would repeatedly scream for us not to turn off the lights. The woman would spend most of the night trying to get out of the room and stay out. This was all nuts, because she was someone who liked to be in bed and be left alone in her room most of the time. One night, she made it all the way out into the hall, walking without her wheelchair, almost falling over, but determined to get out of that room. She would struggle the whole way and put up a fight when I tried to turn her around to go back into the room to sit down. She was out of breath, and there was pure fear in her eyes like I've never seen. I took her to watch TV, and she slept in a recliner in the TV room with me without problems. This lasted about a month after her roommate died and didn't stop until she moved rooms. The general theory is that her departed roommate was getting revenge. Often, I think our patients see their family and loved ones when they're about to die. When they start seeing and talking to family or entities not there, that's how you know it's about to happen. Call bells also go off in empty rooms. At times, I had to physically pull down a bell to sound and push back up to turn one off, even in locked rooms, but this one scares me the most. There seems to be something or someone there that bothers my residents at night. I have a Greek woman who doesn't speak English at the far end of my hall. She'll be talking up a storm. No idea what she's saying, but it will be loud enough to hear all the way down the hall. When I go down to check on her, she stops talking and pretends to sleep, but she starts again when I walk away. This will continue for a while, and she'll stop talking and go to sleep. A few minutes later, the woman in the next room will start talking to something. When she stops, the woman across the hall will start talking to something. They aren't just mumbling either, as it sounds like a conversation. They speak, then pause to listen, and then talk again. Also, no 2 patients are doing it at the same time, and they're all in separate rooms with various levels of dementia. So, it's not like they discuss it, or know what's going on in the other rooms. It's literally like someone is going down the hall from room to room, waking people up to talk until they fall asleep, then going to the next. Usually, the next morning, the patients would then talk about a man who was in their room. They'd say the person visits them and tells them to do things. Sometimes, a patient would tell me that the man is just there with us in the room, standing behind me. Again, all the women were saying the same thing without knowing the others had been seeing the same. This happens on a very regular basis and never stops being creepy. I wonder what the man says to them. So, those are my stories, as I couldn't pick just one from my creepy job. Know of any job openings? I did night security in a very old grain exchange building that had been converted to mainly lawyers' offices. A lot of the building was remodeled, but the grain exchange floor and vaults had been preserved. At the end of one hallway, there was an elevator that was original to the building that nobody ever used. It's behind the main lobby where I was stationed. I was sitting at the desk one night around 3 a.m. when I heard the ding from down the hall. That meant someone had called the elevator. There wasn't supposed to be anyone in the building except me, so I switched to that camera feed. The elevator doors were wide open, which is only supposed to happen if the call button has been pushed. I wait a few minutes being pretty freaked out, but the doors stay open and I never see anybody. The doors should close on their own shortly, but these ones are stuck open. I start to think that someone is in the building and holding the door open button from within where I can't see on the feed, so I have to walk down there to check it out. The doors close as soon as I get near the end of the hallway, where I have a clear view of the elevator. I just kind of stand there, feeling really uneasy, and decide to head back to the desk and leave a note for the maintenance crew. About 10 minutes after I get back to the desk, it happens again. There's a ding, and then the doors roll open. Except I had the feed up, so I know that nobody was there to press the call button. I wait, and again the doors stay open. So I walk back down there, and as soon as I walk into view, they close. There's still a chance someone is hiding inside, pressing the buttons, so I go and press the call button myself. Nothing happens. The elevator doesn't move, and the doors don't open. I press it again, and still nothing, so not wanting to deal with that, I start walking back to the desk. I get to the end of the hallway, and ding! The doors open. I just stood there not really knowing what to do, but then I figure, since I'm closer, maybe I will make it this time, so I take off running for the doors before they close. As soon as I get near, they close again. I don't think it would be in any way possible for someone pressing a button inside to be able to time that without me seeing them peeking out. Finally, I decide I am done and I go back to the desk. Again, there's a ding, and the doors open and stay that way, but I'm tired. I just ignore it and switch to a different feed. All is well for about an hour when suddenly there is a loud crash followed by a rattling sound. Then there's a rattle and another crash again and again. I am absolutely terrified and have no idea what is happening. I start flipping through feeds and get to the one outside the elevator. The doors are slamming shut and opening and slamming shut again and again. It's like it knows it has my attention again, and then the doors slowly reopen and stay there again. It feels like it's tempting me to try and get there before they close again. I do not do that, and instead call our patrol officer who is out driving between locations, so I have proof of this with someone else. He gets there within 5 minutes, and the doors are still open. So, after I fill him in, we head down together, and sure enough, as soon as we get close, the doors close. He goes and presses the call button, and nothing. He's pretty freaked out too now, but we decide to just stay there outside the doors, because if it's just a perfectly timed malfunction, it will open again. We stand there for almost a half hour, and they never open, but he gets a call, so he has to take off. We get halfway back to the desk, and hear the doors open behind us. He tells me to go to the desk and watch the feed while he walks down there. Once I'm in place, I tell him to go, and the same thing happens. As soon as he enters the frame, the doors close. He starts kicking the doors and pressing the buttons, but it doesn't do any good. He has to leave, so he wishes me luck and tells me to just stay away from it until dawn. I have about an hour left in my shift when the doors start doing the slamming and opening thing again. I just stood at the far end of the hallway listening, but it didn't stop. I took off as soon as the shift ended and left a report for maintenance about the issue. On my next shift, I showed up early before they had taken off, but they said it was working fine and they didn't notice anything wrong. That night was quiet. The rest of the time I worked in that building, it just happened a couple of times more. I decided to ignore it, and it didn't bother me again. Please drop a like and subscribe to Eerie Echoes for more horror stories. As always, thank you for watching.